This is the story of a people pleaser and how she became empowered. From Dr. Deb. Hey there, it's Dr. Deb. Welcome to a new playlist. This one is called Situations, and I'm going to present to you in each video different situations that people find themselves in and why they are stuck there and what to do about it. So we're going to start with a person named Molly. And the situation is that Molly is a people pleaser. And people pleasers have a great deal of trouble standing up for themselves. They have a great deal of trouble really getting their own needs met. And what do? As a result of all that, they're either miserable or they escape, they use shopping, drugs, alcohol, or they just escape inside their head, they work a lot, they do a lot of things other than taking care of themselves. And one of the things we found with people pleasers is that you can tell them in cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever, they have to stand up for themselves and it doesn't work. Now, why is that? So let's take a look at Molly and what happened to her. Molly's boss consistently would ask her to stay overtime at night to get last-minute things done that he very well could have assigned her earlier in the day had he been more organized and more efficient. What's more, Molly is married to Jake, and Jake doesn't like that very much because that means that when the kids get home from school, and she's still not home because she's stuck at the office, he, after a long day at work, can't share that responsibility with her. It really annoys him, and he's told her that many times. Now, when that happens, there's a voice in Molly's head that makes everything worse. The voice in Molly's head tells her, "You're so stupid. You can't stand up for yourself. Jake is right. All you need to do is stand up for yourself. Why can't you do that? What's wrong with you? You're a loser," etc. So finally, Molly had a chance to talk to her boss. She actually made an appointment to stand up for herself and say, I'm married, I have kids, my husband doesn't like it, I need to be with my kids, they need their mother, you can't just keep asking me at the last minute. And she did. She made this appointment. She was very proud of herself for actually preparing what to say. And he said, "I'm sorry, Molly, but the way things work out, sometimes this happens and I just need you. Now, if you want to go find work someplace else," and that was all she needed to get really nervous and back down. And on the way home, she was extremely angry at herself with that voice again, telling her what a loser she was and why couldn't she, and there are other people in the office who could have stayed. Why is it that she didn't even bring those people up? Why didn't she throw that in her boss's face? Or maybe why didn't she tell him, "Okay, I'll get something else"? Why? So on the way home, Molly had this idea. As long as she was late anyway, she would just stop off at the mall and she would just take her mind off of her misery. So she did exactly that. She went to the mall and she got lost in the glory of looking at clothes and buying some of them and all the fun and all the thoughts and fantasies about how nice it would be to wear these beautiful things. 2 hours later, she came home, and needless to say, her husband was not happy. Very, very late she was. And it wasn't the first time. As she got to bed at night, there was that voice, because now the voice was saying, "You see, you got Jake mad, and look at what a bill you ran up." Oh, poor Molly. So let's stop the action. Let's all stop blaming Molly. You and me and everyone listening, let's stop blaming Molly for listening to this horrible voice and taking it from the voice. Let's stop blaming Molly for not standing up for herself. Because, see, we have a technique to get to the bottom of this, okay? Molly can sit down, and that's exactly what she does, in another room, all by herself, with no one bothering her and interrupting her because it's late at night when the family is already in bed and she couldn't sleep anyway. And she breathes quietly with her eyes closed. And she asks that voice, "Why do you torture me?" And the voice reminds her with an image of herself, maybe 5 years old. And she could see her cute little 5-year-old self sitting on a chair, a little kid chair, with her father looking very sternly at her, berating her. Her father didn't yell. He wasn't a loud guy. He never hit her. In fact, if she had to admit the truth, he was her favorite person. Her mother was in her own little world. Her mother seemed to not care. We learn later on, and Molly figures this out in her therapy, that her mom was really depressed, and it wasn't that she didn't care, it's that she wasn't there. She was depressed about her life and her issues. Didn't have any energy left over for Molly. But that's another story. So her father, who would take her on walks on a beautiful afternoon, and who would tell her stories at night before bed, the person she would go to as a child when she couldn't sleep, her father really was this good guy. And he was angry at her on this particular day. She doesn't remember why. She's this little kid, and she sees herself squirming on the chair and looking like she's about to cry, and seeing his stern expression, and she sees her little self hanging her head. At that moment, little Molly resolved in her heart of hearts never, ever to defy her father. Always try to make him happy. Always try to please him. Never ask for anything. Just try to please him. Because he's the only person in the world that mattered. He was her lifeline. All right. Cut now to the present moment. There she is, sitting alone in the dark with her thoughts and this voice answering her question. How did I get here? I got here to be a people pleaser because of Dad and because I did not want to make him angry. But what does that have to do with you? She said to the voice. Why are you always berating me? The voice was shocked that she would ask such a question. The answer is very simple. To keep you in line so that you won't actually do the very thing you don't want to do, which is disappoint your father again. Oh, that's where you came into my life from. But voice, I'm 46 years old. I'm not 4 anymore. Don't you know that? The voice stopped a minute. No, I thought you're still a little girl. I don't understand. No, she said to her voice. Listen, thank you for sharing your past history with me. Thank you for telling me how you got to be part of my life. Thank you for reminding me how I resolved never to displease my father, but Dad's been dead 10 years already. And my boss is not my father, and neither is Jake. And what's more, Jake's kind of easygoing. He's kind of mad at me a lot because of what I do, but he's not a bad guy, and he's not about to leave. So do I really need for you to be treating me this way? The voice stopped quietly and said, well, no. Can you handle things? She said, well, I don't know. I've never tried this before, but I will now. So cut forward to the next day, and she goes to work, and she sees her boss, and she grabs him a little bit in the hallway, and she said, we had a good talk yesterday, but there were still unanswered questions like, why me? What you need to do to keep this office running well is rotate amongst us. I will stay one night a month, not 5 nights a week. And for you to prepare ahead of time to let me know what it is you're going to need and when you're going to need it, so that I can prepare with my family as well. How does that strike you? The boss was a little surprised because she was no longer quivering and quaking. She was a little stronger, wasn't she? But still, he wanted to push as much as he could, and he said, I'm sorry, Molly, sometimes things just come up and I can't help it. And she said, I know, but not 5 days a week, once a month. He said, listen, if you don't like it, you can leave. She said, well, I will get workman's comp if you fire me. Is that something you'd like to do? He was shocked. Whoa, that was pretty assertive, wasn't it? And he said, no, Molly, I don't want to fire you. She said, okay, good, then we got a deal. And she turned around and walked to her office. Now, I'd like to explain a little bit more about why this works and how it could work in your life. Yes, it would not be that simple. It would not necessarily be that simple. I mean, it could. The first thing you would have to recognize is that these voices in your head are normal, they're not alien, they're parts of you, and they came into your life because you needed them at one time. But now isn't that time anymore. That's the first thing you'd have to realize. And you can make use of that fact to kind of prove to the voices themselves that you yourself can handle everything. And if you're not sure what I mean by you yourself, then please go back to the other playlist, the playlist that I have done called We Have the Secret to Healing Crappy Marriages. It's an 11-part playlist on self, who yourself really is, and we all have one. So that you, in the same place as Molly, can understand that, yeah, you do have a strong, brave, courageous self that can stick up for herself or himself and get ahead of problems, head them off at the pass, as Molly did in the second version of her conversation with her boss. The second thing I want you to realize and learn from the scenario is how Molly handled that voice. That voice is a little kid protector that's been guiding her forever. Well, since she was 5, so for 40 years, it's been guiding her. And it could be guiding her for 50 years or 60 years because that's what happens to people. So what is it that she did with that voice? She didn't try to kick the voice out because, you see, you can't. That's part of you. You can't ignore the voice. Well, she ignored the whole scene by going shopping, But the voice came back later, right? That voice was annoyed with her for failing the first time she had the conversation with her boss, and she went shopping, and she did quiet the voice because she got lost in her shopping, much as a person would get lost in drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, or overwork if she liked to work and didn't want to come home, which that wasn't the case in her case. But you can't basically get rid of the voice. In therapy, if the therapist tells you to stamp out the voice, it won't work. That therapist doesn't know what they're talking about because it's a part of you that came into your life to help you. Since it's there to help you, you can't stamp it out. So what are your 2 takeaways from this session? Takeaway number 1, these are parts of you, and they came into your life because they were needed. You needed them. You weren't able to defend yourself as a kid. You didn't know what to do, how to handle your parents or whatever your situation was. So you needed them. That's number 1. Takeaway number 2, Molly dealt with them very well. She didn't banish them. She didn't yell at them. She didn't try to ignore them. What she did was she took leadership over the parts, using the information that the parts gave her to help herself. We'll explore Molly or other people more in upcoming situations. Hey guys, like, comment, subscribe, get notifications, but please do something for yourself. Watch my webinar where I take a deep dive into what I consider to be the only and best method of healing old trauma and new trauma that's going on in your life today. Find out why it works and how it can help you. And maybe you'll even get a chance to speak to me one-on-one.